I discovered my wife was secretly working with her lawyer to steal our $250, $0 inheritance after she lied about it for years, and now she's trying to turn our divorce into a legal battlefield over the house and land I built from scratch. I can't believe I trusted her. I never thought I'd be the guy to catch his wife cheating on him, especially not after 10 years of marriage. We had our ups and downs, sure, but I always believed we were solid. That was until I stumbled across something that blew my entire world apart, something I never saw coming. It started with small things, weird little signs that didn't make sense at the time. She'd be secretive on her phone more often than usual, deleting messages immediately when I'd walk into the room. She'd make excuses, it's just work stuff, she'd say, or my lawyer been calling about the will. But I could tell she was hiding something. Then came the night I decided to check her phone while she was out of the house. I know, trust and all that, but I was suspicious, and I needed to know what was really going on. I found texts from a guy named Mark, a lawyer's assistant she'd been talking to a lot lately. At first I thought it was just business, but then I saw the messages, things about meetings after hours, secret plans, and even flirtatious comments. My stomach dropped. I scrolled further and found photos, her in his car, her in a hotel room, smiling like she was having the time of her life. She wasn't just cheating, she was planning something big. That's when I saw the most shocking part, a PDF saved on her phone titled Inheritance Plan. I opened it and saw details about a $250, $0 inheritance I'd been saving up for years, something I never told her about explicitly but always planned to use for our future. She'd been lying all along about that inheritance, claiming it was just a rumor, that I was imagining things. Turns out she'd been working with her lawyer to steal that money from under my nose. She'd lied to my face for years, pretending to be the devoted wife, all while scheming behind my back. I couldn't believe it. The woman I trusted with everything, who I'd built a life with from scratch, was actively plotting to take my money and run off with some guy. I felt numb at first, like I'd been punched in the gut. But then anger took over. How could she betray me like this? How could she lie so effortlessly? I was furious. I wanted to confront her immediately, but I knew I needed a plan. I had to be smart. This wasn't just about her cheating. It was about protecting what was mine. I needed to gather proof, figure out her next move, and figure out how to fight back. That night I stayed up late, going through her emails and messages, piecing together her entire scheme. I found out she'd been talking to behind my back for months, planning the transfer of the inheritance into a secret account. It was so calculated, so cold. I realized she'd been lying to me about everything, about her work, about her meetings, about her friendship with. She'd been playing me for a fool, and I felt like such a sucker for trusting her this whole time. I knew I couldn't let this slide. I had to act fast. I called the next morning and arranged to meet him. I also started documenting everything, screenshots, messages, bank statements. I wanted to have all my ducks in a row before I confronted her. My mind was racing with questions. How long had she been planning this? How much money had she already taken? What else was she hiding? The betrayal cut deep, but what hurt even more was realizing I had been blind to her true nature all along. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I kept replaying the moments when she lied about the inheritance, when she made excuses for her secretive behavior. It all made sense now. Her bitchy attitude when I questioned her, her sudden trips out of town, the way she avoided my eyes when I pressed her about money. She'd been a master manipulator, and I was just too blind to see it. Now, everything was out in the open, and I had to decide what to do next. I knew this wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about trust, betrayal, and whether I could ever forgive her for this. I never imagined I'd be in this situation, but here I was, standing at the crossroads of heartbreak and revenge. I was done playing the victim. She thought she could lie and cheat her way into a new life, but I was about to show her that I wasn't going down without a fight. I had a plan, and it was only just beginning. The moment I confronted her, I knew I had to be cold and calculated. No yelling, no accusations, just facts. I waited until she got home from her meeting, which I now knew was just her rendezvous with. She walked in, all bitchy smirk and attitude, acting like she had done nothing wrong. I stood there silently holding the phone with all the evidence I'd gathered. Her eyes flicked to it, and I could see the flicker of panic behind her usual arrogance. "Sarah," I said, voice steady but cold, "we need to talk, and I mean really talk." She rolled her eyes and tried to brush past me, but I blocked her. "I know everything. About the inheritance, about your little scheme to steal my money." Her face turned pale for a split second, then she recovered, throwing out a line like she always did: deflect, deny, lie. "Oh, come on, Jack," she sneered. "You're overreacting. You're just jealous because I've been working with to get us ahead. You've been so paranoid lately." But I didn't buy it. I pushed the screenshots across the table. "This isn't paranoia, this is betrayal. You've been lying to me for years, pretending to be the perfect wife, all the while planning to take everything I've built." Her eyes widened and her bitchy facade cracked. She started sputtering excuses, how she deserved more, how she was just trying to secure our future, how I was controlling her. I cut her off. "You lied about the inheritance, about your work, about everything. You've been working with behind my back, trying to steal our money. Do you even realize what you've done? Do you understand how much trust you've destroyed?" She looked furious now, her face twisting into that familiar bitchy sneer. "You're overreacting," she spat. "You're just mad because I'm smarter than you and I'm finally taking what's mine." That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about money. This was about her ego, her need to control, her greed. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. The emotional hit me hard. First there was shock, how could she do this? Then pure rage, how dare she betray me like this after everything? I felt sick, betrayed, and humiliated. I'd trusted her with my life, my future, my love. And she'd used that trust to manipulate me to get what she wanted. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, like my entire world was crumbling. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and all I could think about was how to stop her from taking everything I'd worked for. But beneath the anger there was a flicker of sadness. I had loved her. I had wanted a future with her. And now I was faced with the stark reality that the woman I married was not the person I thought she was. I felt betrayed by her lies, her manipulations, her bitchy attitude when I questioned her. I wondered if I'd ever be able to trust anyone again. The pain was raw, but I knew I couldn't let her see that. I had to keep my cool, gather more proof, and decide what my next move was going to be. The confrontation ended with her storming out of the house, screaming about how I was crazy and jealous, trying to make me look like the bad guy. But I knew the truth now, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I sat down, took a deep breath, and started planning my next steps. I had to protect what was mine, my house, my land, my future. I knew she'd try to fight me over the house and land I built from scratch, but I was ready. I had the evidence, I had the legal knowledge, and I was determined to win. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the events, trying to understand how I'd been so blind. I thought about the years we'd spent together, the memories, the promises. And I realized that sometimes trust is a fragile thing, something that can shatter in an instant. I was hurt, yes, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I knew I couldn't let her walk all over me anymore. She'd betrayed me once, and I was going to make sure she paid for it. I decided I'd fight her in every way I could, legally, financially, and emotionally. She'd regret ever crossing me. I knew this was only the beginning. The real battle was just starting, and I was ready to fight for what was mine. I wasn't going to let her ruin everything I'd worked for. I was done being the victim. From now on, I was the one in control, and I was going to make sure she understood that. After that confrontation, I knew I had to act fast. Sarah's reaction told me everything I needed to know. She was already planning to fight me hard over the house, the land, everything. She's always been bitchy, manipulative, and she's got that way of acting innocent when she's actually planning her next move. I also realized she'd been lying about the inheritance, about her work, about her entire life. But I wasn't just angry. I was determined to take back control. I started calling my lawyer first thing the next morning, explaining everything I found and asking for advice on how to protect my assets. My lawyer, Dave, is a sharp guy. He told me to gather all the proof I could: texts, emails, bank statements, anything that shows her scheming. I already had a lot, but I knew I needed more. I spent the next few days digging through our financial accounts, pulling up every document I could find. Sarah had been transferring money into a secret account she'd set up with, and I needed to see exactly how much she'd taken. I also contacted a private investigator I'd been recommended, just to verify her movements and get some footage of her with. I wanted hard evidence, and I was going to get it. Meanwhile, Sarah kept acting like everything was fine, but I saw her more bitchy and defensive every time I brought up money or her excuses about her work. She'd snap at me, accuse me of being paranoid, call me controlling. But I knew better now. I knew she was lying about everything. I also found out she'd been telling her friends she was planning to leave me, that she's tired of waiting around for the inheritance and that she's done with this life. That made me even angrier. She'd been planning her escape, using me as a fool all along. One day, I decided to confront her again, this time with the evidence. I laid everything out on the table, screenshots of her texts, bank statements showing the transfers, the private investigators' report. Her face twisted with rage when she saw it. She started yelling, claiming I was crazy, that I was snooping, and that I was trying to ruin her. I didn't bother arguing. I just told her I was done playing her game. I told her I'd go to court if I had to, and that I'd fight her for every penny and every piece of land I built from scratch. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt betrayed, angry, and exhausted all at once. I'd loved her, trusted her, and now I realized she'd never loved me back. She just wanted my money, my land, my future. It was a crushing blow. I kept thinking about all those years I worked hard, building our life, only to see her plan to take it all away with her lawyer and her lies. I felt helpless, yet I knew I couldn't let her win. I had to stand my ground. As the days went on, I started preparing for the legal fight. I met with my lawyer to discuss how to protect the house and land from her attempts to claim it. She'd been trying to turn the divorce into a legal battlefield, especially over the property I built with my blood, sweat, and tears. I knew she'd try to argue that she was entitled to half, even though she contributed nothing to the land or the house. I had to make sure I had the right legal strategy. Meanwhile, I was also thinking about how to handle her bitchy attitude and her attempts to manipulate the situation. She'd already started spreading rumors among her friends, trying to paint me as the crazy, jealous husband. I knew I had to stay calm, keep my evidence ready, and not let her drag me into petty fights. I also decided I'd need to be prepared for her to try to manipulate the divorce process, to turn it into a nightmare of legal battles. I wasn't going to let her do that. I was ready for a fight, and I knew I had the upper hand because I had the proof. I also realized I needed to protect myself emotionally. I'd been by her betrayal, but I couldn't let her see how much it hurt. I had to stay strong, focus on my goals, and keep my head clear. I started reaching out to friends who had always been supportive, trying to get some perspective and comfort. I also started making plans to move out of the house if it came to that, because I didn't want to be there while she tried to manipulate the situation further. I had to take control of my life again, and that meant doing everything by the book. This whole experience has been a nightmare, no doubt about it. But I also know it's opened my eyes to who Sarah really is: selfish, manipulative, and only out for herself. I trusted her for so long, and now I see how blind I was. But I'm also learning to stand up for myself. I'm not going to let her ruin what I built, not without a fight. I've got my evidence, my lawyer, and my resolve. I don't know exactly how it's all going to play out, but I do know one thing: I won't let her take everything without a battle. Not this time. The legal process moved faster than I expected once I handed all my evidence over to Dave. He's a no-nonsense guy, and he immediately filed for an emergency injunction to freeze any accounts related to the inheritance and to prevent Sarah from selling or transferring the land and house. That was a huge relief. She couldn't just walk away with everything she'd been scheming for. But I knew this was just the beginning. The real fight was going to be over the property, and I had to be ready for her to fight dirty. Meanwhile, Sarah's attitude shifted from bitchy and manipulative to outright hostile. She started making passive-aggressive comments, trying to guilt-trip me into dropping the case. She'd say things like, "You're just jealous I'm finally going to get what I deserve," or You're ruining our family over some stupid money." She kept trying to turn the entire situation around, painting herself as the victim, even though I had all the proof that she was the one scheming behind my back. I could see her desperation growing, and honestly, it made me angrier. She thought she could lie, cheat, and manipulate her way out of this, but I wasn't going to let her. One night she came home late, smelling like perfume and cigarettes. I knew she'd been with again, probably trying to hatch some new plan. I didn't confront her then. What was the point? Instead, I just sat in the living room, staring at the photos of her with him, the bank statements, the texts. I felt a mix of disgust and heartbreak. How could I have been so blind? I'd loved her, trusted her, built our life together, only for her to turn around and try to steal everything from under my nose. I kept thinking about the land I built from nothing, the house I poured my sweat into. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about my future, my hard work, my pride. The next day, I met with a financial advisor to understand what I was up against. Sarah had been transferring money into that secret account, and I needed to see if I could recover what she'd taken or prevent her from accessing it. The advisor told me that we could potentially claw back some of the funds through the courts, but it would be a long process. I also learned that she'd been trying to get a loan using the land as collateral, another move to drain what was left of my assets. I realized she was determined to take everything I had, even if it meant risking foreclosure or bankruptcy. I also reached out to a divorce mediator to see if we could settle some issues amicably, but I knew Sarah wasn't interested in compromise. She'd already shown that she was willing to fight dirty, and I wasn't about to give her an inch. The more I learned, the clearer it became that I needed to prepare for a brutal legal battle. I started documenting every interaction, every phone call, every message, every meeting. I wanted to have a trail of her lies and manipulations that I could present in court. I also talked to my family and a few close friends, just to get their support and advice. I needed to keep my head clear and stay focused on my goal, protecting what I built and making sure she didn't walk away with everything. Throughout all this, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. I kept replaying all the moments we'd shared, the plans we'd made, the trust I'd given her. It was like a punch in the stomach every time I thought about how she'd lied to me, how she'd secretly been working with, how she'd been trying to rob me blind. I felt a mixture of grief and anger, grief for the marriage I thought we had, anger at her for destroying it. But I also knew I had to stay strong. I couldn't let her see how much she'd hurt me. I had to be the one holding it together for my sake and for the sake of what I was fighting for. I started making arrangements to move out of the house. Not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't stay there while she was trying to manipulate the situation further. I also began changing my passwords, securing my accounts, and making sure I had access to everything. I didn't trust her anymore, and I wasn't going to let her get the upper hand. I knew she'd try to spin things, spread rumors, and try to turn friends and family against me. But I had the evidence, and I was ready to stand firm. It's amazing how quickly your life can turn upside down when someone you trusted turns out to be a liar and a thief. I never thought I'd be in this position, fighting to keep what's mine, feeling like I'd been by someone I loved. But I also learned a lot about myself, about resilience, about not trusting blindly, and about standing up for what's right. I'm not giving up without a fight. I'm going to make sure she pays for her betrayal, legally and financially. And more than anything, I'm going to rebuild my life, even if it takes years. Because at the end of the day, I know I deserve better than someone who would lie, cheat, and manipulate her way into my future. The legal battles dragged on longer than I expected, but I was prepared for a fight. Every time I thought about Sarah's bitchy attitude and her attempts to manipulate the court, I got more determined. Dave, my lawyer, kept telling me to stay calm and stick to the facts. He filed for a full accounting of all the money she transferred into that secret account, and we pushed hard to get her served with the court orders to freeze her assets. I could see her frustration growing. She was used to getting her way, used to pretending she was the victim. But now she was facing the reality that I wasn't going to back down. Meanwhile, she kept trying to spin her side of the story. She'd call me controlling, jealous, paranoid, anything to make herself look innocent. She'd even accuse me of stalking her, which was laughable considering I had all the proof of her scheming. Every time she pulled her bitchy attitude, I just reminded myself why I was doing this. To protect what I built, to keep the land and house that I worked so hard on, and to make sure she didn't get away with stealing from me. One day she showed up at my office unannounced, furious and crying. "You're ruining everything," she yelled, her voice shrill. "You're making me look bad. I deserve that inheritance just as much as you do. You're just jealous I found someone who actually cares about me." I looked her straight in the eyes and told her she was a liar and a thief. I reminded her that the court had all the evidence and that I was going to fight her for every cent. I could see her bitchy smirk falter for a moment, but she quickly recovered and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The emotional toll was heavy. I felt betrayed, furious, and exhausted, but I also started feeling a strange sense of clarity. I had trusted her for so long, and that trust had been shattered. Every day I woke up, I was reminded of how she'd lied to my face, manipulated my kindness, and tried to steal my future. It hurt, but it also made me realize I needed to be stronger than ever. I couldn't let her manipulate her way out of this. I had to fight with everything I had. I also started thinking about the aftermath, what life would look like if I won and what I'd do if I lost. I knew I couldn't let her keep the land or the house. Those were my blood, sweat, and tears. I also knew she'd try to turn the court against me, accuse me of abuse or control, but I had all the evidence to counter that. I made a detailed timeline of her lies, her secret meetings with, her transfers of money. I wanted to be prepared for every possible scenario. I also reached out to some trusted friends who had seen her bitchy side before. They confirmed what I already knew. She's always been manipulative, selfish, and quick to throw tantrums when she doesn't get her way. Hearing that helped me stay grounded. I also started making plans to move out of the house to get a fresh start. I didn't want to be there anymore, not while she was trying to turn everything into a legal nightmare. I knew she'd do whatever it took to win, so I had to be just as relentless. The worst part was knowing she was still lying and scheming behind my back, probably with trying to find new ways to screw me over. But I refused to be her pawn. I had the evidence and I had the law on my side. I was ready to fight for what was mine, my land, my house, my future. I knew the court would see through her lies eventually. I just had to hold strong and stay patient. It's one thing to be betrayed, but it's another to let her destroy everything I worked for. That's not going to happen. The process has been draining, but I've learned a lot about resilience and standing up for myself. I've realized that trust is fragile, and once broken, it's almost impossible to repair. But I also know that I deserve to protect what's mine and to see her held accountable for her actions. I'm not just fighting for money or property. I'm fighting for my dignity, my future, and my peace of mind. And I won't stop until justice is served. The final stretch of this ordeal has been the most intense, but also the most revealing. After months of legal battles, Sarah's bitchy attitude, and her relentless attempts to manipulate the court, the truth finally started to come out in full force. The court hearings were grueling. She tried every tactic in the book to sway the judge, from emotional outbursts to false accusations of abuse, but I had all my evidence in order. Every text, every bank statement, every lie she told was laid bare. I could see her frustration mounting. She's used to getting her way, but now she was facing a reality where her schemes weren't going to work anymore. When the judge finally made the ruling, it was clear I had won the case to protect the land and house I built from scratch. The court ordered her to return the stolen inheritance funds and barred her from transferring any assets related to our property. She looked furious, her bitchy smirk replaced with a scowl of defeat. She stormed out of the courtroom, yelling about how unfair everything was, but I didn't care. I finally felt a sense of relief, like I had reclaimed what was rightfully mine after being betrayed and lied to for so long. The aftermath was a whirlwind of emotions. I felt a mix of exhaustion, victory, and lingering anger, but mostly I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. I had fought tooth and nail to protect my future, and I had succeeded. I moved out of the house soon after, not because I wanted to abandon everything, but because I knew staying there would only be a reminder of the betrayal. I started focusing on rebuilding my life, finding a new place to live, and repairing the emotional damage Sarah had caused. In the process, I learned some hard lessons. Trust is fragile, and sometimes the person you love the most can turn out to be your biggest enemy. I also learned that standing up for yourself, even when it's difficult, is the only way to truly move forward. I realized that revenge is just about getting even. It's about reclaiming your dignity and ensuring justice is served. Looking back, I don't hate Sarah, at least not anymore. I'm angry, yes, but I also feel a strange sense of liberation. This experience has made me stronger, more cautious, and more aware of who I can and cannot trust. I've come to accept that some people are just selfish and manipulative, and you have to be prepared to fight for what's yours. Now, I focus on my future. I'm rebuilding what I lost, and I'm doing it on my own terms. The land and house are safe, and I've started saving again for the next chapter of my life. I don't hold on to bitterness anymore, just a hard-earned wisdom. If there's anything I want to tell others going through similar betrayals, it's this: don't let anyone steal your peace or your future. Stand your ground, gather your evidence, and fight for what's right. Because at the end of the day, your integrity and your hard work are worth more than any lie or scheme someone tries to throw your way.